Today, I'm speaking with Danielle. We talk about her first birth within a birth center. The experience ended with her son being unnecessarily pulled from her body by the medical midwife, causing tearing to her vulva. After having a friend mention to Danielle that what happened to her during her first birth was not right, Danielle came to realize that for her next babies, she wasn't going to pay to have another provider pull them from her body. She chose to birth free of the medical system with her second baby, where her placenta stayed in for a longer than what's considered normal amount of time. All was well, and Danielle trusted her instincts and safely released it when it was ready. For her third birth, Danielle's mother passed away before the baby was born, but Danielle was able to lean into the grief while navigating this pregnancy and birthed her baby in the comfort of her own closet. These are such beautiful stories that Danielle shares with us about her experiences of birthing in power. Hello, Danielle. Thank you
Hello.
so much for being here in the Free Birthing in Color movement. I'm very excited to hear your stories. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to get straight into it. I'm very excited to speak to you. I have spoken to you on different topics in a different kind of space that we've been in together. So this is really amazing to have you here. So the first question is, what is your ancestry and lineage that you're passing on to your children?
Yeah, so through my mother line, my grandma is actually Panamanian, Jamaican, and English.
Mm.
And her mom was Jamaican and English, and then her dad was from Agua Dulce, Panama. And so then she had my mom, and my mom's father is Irish. And then my dad's family has been in America since like the 1600s, we can trace back. So he's just a big mix of different European countries. And so I am basically Panamanian Irish, is normally what I go by. And I really feel connected to the Central America Latin ancestry a lot. So that's what I am.
Wow, that's amazing that you know back to your mother's mother and
Hmm.
her ancestry, because a lot of people,
Yeah.
excuse me, a lot of people don't really know even that far, even though it's not that, that's your grandmother, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know the lineage of their grandma or where she's
No,
from.
I definitely annoy my grandma because I ask a lot of family questions, and she was raised in New York, so and her parents weren't married, so being something different from an unmarried family at that time wasn't good.
Mhm.
And I do bother her because I ask a lot of questions. And her grandma's grandma, her name's Emma, she was the last woman in my mother line to have a birth at home.
Mm.
And she was attended by her sister, attended her births. And so I felt a really big connection to her name's Emma. I felt big connection to her when I was pregnant with one of my daughters. So I
Wow.
definitely just
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so I'm super excited to hear about that connection. But first, the next question I want to ask is, where does your mothering journey begin?
It definitely begins when I was really young. My oldest sister had a baby when I was 4.5. My sister's 14 years older than me, so she was 18 when my nephew was born. And then when I was in middle school, it was like all three of my sisters were having babies, like one after another. And so I actually attended my niece's birth at the hospital when I was 13. And so from then on, I was like, this is cool. And I had baby fever as a teenager. Like, even when I was dating as a teenager, I was like, I'm going to go to college, get married, and have babies super
Mhm.
quick. And I was honest about that. I was like 18, telling my 18-year-old boyfriend, this is what I want.
Mhm.
And So when I met my husband, he knew straight up. I was like, when I'm done with school, I want to get married and have babies. So yeah, that's what I did.
Nice. So do you want to get into that first pregnancy experience? Like, how did you find out you're pregnant? Did you come off of hormonal birth
Yeah.
control, or were you tracking your fertility? Like, what was that kind of journey getting into the pregnancy with your first?
So, I had been off birth control for a year. I was on the pill, and I had learned that after being on the pill for like 4 years, I'm looking up why am I having so many UTIs? And I found out that a side effect of UTI or a side effect of birth control is you can have chronic UTIs.
Mm.
And so I saw that. I was with my husband. I was in my last year of college, and I was like, I told him this is my last month on birth control and then I'm done because I would get UTIs or being with him would be super painful. Even if we were, slow and taking our time, it was terrible. So, um, I got off birth control and I did loosely track my cycles, because I was not trying to get pregnant. And then we got married, and I was like, let's mess around a little bit. Let's see what happens. And my first time ovulating. Here, wait, hold on. Can we pause the recording because I hear a baby?
Yeah, just
Yeah, so my husband and we got married, and yeah, the following cycle after I got married, I said let's mess around and maybe we'll get pregnant. And I definitely did not think that on the first try that was going to happen.
mhm.
And then we're about to move to Miami, and 2 days before we were moving, I took a test just for fun, because that was kind of my monthly ritual. Even though we weren't trying to have babies, I would just take a test because my cycle was 29 to like 32 days.
Mm.
So I would psych myself out sometimes and say, oh, I think I'm slightly nauseous. And tests were always negative. So when I bought this test, I did not even think I was pregnant. It was literally just my monthly ritual. And it was a fat, dark line. Like, I called my sister and she was so excited. And I said, nope, I need a second opinion. And I drove to Walmart and I bought 3 more pregnancy tests and then took them all. And I was happy, but I was like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck? Because we're moving to Miami. I fully planned on getting a job, like a career type job.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, now I'm pregnant. I have to quit vaping. I was vaping at the time. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can't vape. I'm pregnant. And so I'm dreading the drive from Connecticut to Miami. And yeah, so yeah, that's how I found out I was pregnant. And I knew I wanted an unmedicated birth. I had been around a bunch of my sisters having their babies and listening to their birth stories. And my sisters who had unmedicated hospital births always seemed happier with their birth story than my sisters who had epidurals. And none of them had C-sections, but a couple of the stories, um, the nurses or doctors were saying, oh, it's taking too long. We need to give you a C-section. And they knew that it was taking a while because of potentially the epidural. And they were
Mm.
strong in themselves to say, no, I'm not doing that. But I just remember being like, that's so unfair that they're going through that. And one sister, I was like just sitting in the recovery room, and there were all these pamphlets in there. So I just was reading them, and I was reading the pros and cons of an epidural. And one of the cons was you could have cankles from
Mm.
water retention. And I had seen my sister's cankles for like 3 days after she had a baby. And right then and there. So hearing the stories, seeing the stories, but also just seeing, oh, I could have cankles and I have to have a catheter if I get an epidural. I was like, absolutely not. I don't want that. So um I looked at the hospitals around me, and they had terrible C-section rates. Absolutely terrible. One of them, the hospital across the street from my birth center, the C-section rate was actually 70%.
Oh my
And
God.
I had to do some digging, deep digging to find out the statistic there. Um, that hospital is called Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. And the birth center that I ended up finding and having my son at is called Holistic South Pregnancy and Birth Center. And the birth center said, we're holistic, we do minimal testing, which really wasn't minimal. It was a first trimester ultrasound and the anatomy ultrasound. They do all the routine blood work.
Mhm.
They do make you aware that you can say no,
Mhm.
but did try to say no to an iron test in my third trimester. I had low, what they said was low iron, so I took an iron supplement, and I just didn't want to retest. I kind of was like, I'm taking the supplement, can you just not test me again? And they said, we really have to. And I kind of was like, do you really have to? And they were like, yeah. So even though you're within your right to say no, they kind of make it
They make it
difficult.
difficult. Hmm.
um, they do the diabetes test, but if you request to eat their jelly beans, so they give you organic, um, like non-artificial food coloring cane sugar jelly beans. You can take jelly beans instead of drinking glucola.
Mm.
Um, and they do the strep B. Like they really do everything. They just don't do excessive ultrasounds, I would say. So
Mm.
I went there. I thought it was great for the most part. I didn't like the blood work. I almost fainted, and the midwife laughed at me and said I was cute until I said, I'm seeing spots and my hearing's going. And then she took me serious, and um like I didn't like the testing because I knew I was fine, and I know that when blood gets drawn from me I almost faint. And
Hmm.
kind of was like, you can take my blood, but I know I'm good and I might pass out. So it just was that was very uncomfortable. But they said they don't do any unnecessary intervention. So I just felt very okay, like this is a safe place for me to have a baby. I'm with knowledgeable women. I wasn't scared that an OB wasn't attending me. Like I felt very fine in the hands of a midwife. And I
Mm.
didn't know the difference between traditional midwifery and midwifery. Um, but my midwife, she studied in Nigeria. So I thought, oh, she's lived in villages. So I thought, this is great. Like, she'll leave me alone.
Mm.
And um, when I called to say I was in labor, I actually didn't know I was in labor. My sister encouraged me to record my contractions, and so I did. And she said I was in labor. I was like, no, I'm not, and I was. So that was kind of fun that it took my sister telling me that. But they said come into the birth center. They checked me. She didn't believe I was in labor because I was not moaning and groaning because I wasn't comfortable moaning and groaning in front of her yet.
Mm.
Um, like it's not like I knew my midwife was nice, but it's hard to be uncomfortable around strangers. You don't want to show discomfort. So
Hmm.
I wasn't moaning and groaning. And she goes, you're not, I don't think you're in labor. I think you're just tired of being pregnant. And I'm like, I think I'm in labor. She goes, you're not having contractions. And I'm like, I'm currently having one. And then
Mm.
she looked at my stomach tightening and she goes, oh, that looked like a good one. So
Mm.
basically she checked me. She said she went like this with her fingers. She goes, I could spread you to a 6. So she did a cervical check and like spread my cervix open. And so she told me to go get food, come back, we'll check me again. And if I'm out of 6, they can admit me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. So I did that, got food, walked around the parking lot. I was very uncomfortable. Just I wanted to be in my little birth sanctuary, you know. I wasn't trying to run around Miami.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so labor was fine. Like I did it. A doula showed up who I didn't like her, but we were required at our first birth to have the doula from my birth center. She's also like the owner of the birth center, and I think she just likes attending births because it's required for you to have her.
Right.
And then,
That's weird. That's a
yeah,
weird rule to say you're required to have a doula
yeah.
at your birth. Like, yes, that's great for women to have that support if they want it, but to make it a requirement, that's really weird.
And I wasn't friends with this lady. Like, if she was, I mean, I talked to her when I was at my appointments,
Mm,
because there, but it wasn't like, oh, I feel warmth from you. Yeah, I want you at my birth.
hmm
And so she was there, a nurse for the baby was there, and then a midwife in training was there.
mm,
And so I just labored in the tub. I kind of had coach pushing, and they said if you feel pushy, push. And I was feeling kind of pushy, so I just pushed. And I pushed for a long time, and I just don't think I was ready.
mm,
Um, and then basically my son, he was born to his eyebrows. So part of him came out, and everything was fine. I was fine. I wasn't scared. Nothing was wrong. And my midwife decided to do fundal pressure, which is something
mm.
I learned the name of. So she had my husband shove on my stomach, and she pulled my son out of me like with her hands.
Oh
And
God.
I remember like that was the worst, that was the hardest part. And I remember telling myself, screaming won't make it better because it hurt so bad.
Mm,
And at the time, so he was born, he was perfect. He didn't cry, but I could tell he was fine. So then they rubbed his back aggressively to make him cry. And then he cried for like 30 minutes because,
mm,
you know, he was fine. And then they bothered him, you know?
mm,
I had 2 first degree tears, and I did refuse stitches, and
mhm,
I healed fine. I didn't think to ask if they could numb me. Like my brain was just not like you just had a baby, so I wasn't thinking,
mhm,
hey, I might have stuff to numb me, and if they can numb me, maybe I'll say yes. I just was thinking if they don't have epidurals here, they can't numb me, and I am not getting stitched without
mhm,
being, you know, so I healed naturally.
mhm,
And long time, like I was like, this was great. My baby was fine. They were there just in case. I really don't think that I needed them to do that, but it wasn't a big deal. It's kind of what was in my head was like my mother instinct never said I that my baby wasn't okay.
mm,
But I had a girlfriend who free birth was already on her radar, and she put it on my radar, and she kind of was just very loving and honest and was like that doesn't sound right,
mm,
like it doesn't really sound good. So I just kind of thought about it a lot, and I was like, you know, I was fine, and she put her hands in me and didn't ask me either.
mm.
um I don't want to do that again. And also on top of that, the birth center was 5,000 after insurance, and I was like, I didn't like what they did, and I don't want to pay someone $5,000
Yeah.
uh to do that, you know.
Mhm.
So I think my son was 7 months old when I told my husband, whenever we have the next one, I'm not having anyone there. And so he was kind of just concerned if that was legal.
Mm,
And he said, okay, whatever you want, but we have to know how to do the paperwork beforehand. I was like, all right, fine. So then I was, I think, 10, almost 10 months postpartum, and I was thinking about having another one, and I didn't really know how to reach spirit babies, but I had heard about spirit babies, and I went on a walk and I just said, spirit babies, I want to have another baby,
Mm.
and I'd prefer a girl, but I'm okay with a boy because I think I'm gonna have 3 kids. So if you want to be a boy, the next one could be a girl. And I said I want a free birth. So whoever wants me as their mom has to be fine with that.
Mhm.
And like shortly after, I said, "Hey, I think I'm fertile. You want to mess around?" And he did. And I wasn't ovulating, but I knew I was close to it. So we
Mhm.
met on a Friday, and on that Sunday, I was ovulating. I said, "Hey, I'm ovulating. You want to go again?" And my husband was like, "Nope." And I said, "Okay, well, just so you know, like swimmers can live for up to 5 days. So like I could get pregnant from that." And I knew I was pregnant so early. I started testing way too early. And I went to like the dollar store. I got a handful of pregnancy tests, and I tested like every single day.
Mm.
And I showed him when I got the first faint line, and he goes, "It's not dark enough." And I'm like, "I'm pregnant because it's not, the line's not dark enough." So then eventually I got a digital test, and then he believed me.
Mm.
So then that was my daughter Cody's um pregnancy, and her pregnancy was when I decided I'm going to have a mostly wild pregnancy and free birth.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So now we're getting into all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found out I was pregnant, and I was so excited. But I definitely didn't know, how do I go about, I don't want to listen to other people's negativity. I don't I don't want to I just don't want to deal with the nonsense. Some people will ask you, some people who are full of anxiety will ask you all these different questions. And sometimes when people ask you questions, they're actually wanting to learn. They want to know,
Mhm.
um, they do want to know, how do you handle this situation that might come up. But other people, I feel like they're kind of just trying to put their angst on you.
Yeah.
And they're angsty, they want you to be angsty and maybe change what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot that was a big thing for my second pregnancy. Was it was very All my pregnancies are physically so easy, but emotionally, um, it was very taxing. The roller coaster of just, I want my loved ones, I want to share joy with them, and I want to call my family and say, I bought puppy pads to prepare for the birth, and I want them to get excited with me. And I had very minimal support. Um, I had a girlfriend who was pregnant with her first and planning her first free birth. So we were kind of each other's support system. I had a girlfriend who was a new friend at the time. We've been friends for almost 3 years now, but she was very loving. She only asked questions with love, and she was very supportive. So I had her. My dad was very open minded, and he is a big man of God, and he was very, "You're smart, you know what you're doing, and God's got you." So
Mhm.
he never shared, and so I could share with him. But other than that, I didn't really have the love and the support from like my family. They didn't really know how to hold space for me, I guess. Like, I'm perfectly okay with someone being scared and saying that's not what I would do.
Mhm.
But a lot of people could say that's not for me, but I can see it's for you. Like they couldn't do that. They couldn't hold space.
Mhm.
Um so I did look for a midwife because I wanted to say I did. And the midwife in my area, because I moved more to central Florida. The midwife in my area said if I didn't do any of the routine blood work, um, she couldn't touch me. She said that if she attended my birth and I needed stitches or I needed her to touch me in some way, she wouldn't or she couldn't if I didn't do all the blood work, like the hepatitis, blood tests, the HIV, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told her I did all that with my son. I promise you I don't cheat on my husband, and I promise you he doesn't cheat on me.
Mm-hmm.
And he really couldn't cheat on me because he works from home and it was COVID, so no one was going anywhere, and I have his location on my phone.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I know you don't know me, but I promise you my husband's not giving me any party favors, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. And she was I didn't like her. I think she was a B word. And she was like, nope, can't touch you. So I was like, all right, well, I looked. I had emailed Emily from the Free Birth Society, and she had given me information of other free birth women in Florida just to see if they knew of anyone, and they didn't, but they said good things like you got this kind of thing. They were really nice. And so I kind of just didn't tell anyone my plans. I just said, oh, I'm in my first trimester. The appointments don't do anything. Like, if I'm going to miscarry, I'm going to miscarry. So having an appointment just, it doesn't do anything. And I honestly don't remember when I was honest with, with like my extended family. I think they kind of just were like, we haven't heard anything. So I guess she's not getting a midwife. And then I was honest with my side of the family. Um, and they were kind of some family members were taken aback, but they just let me do my thing. And if I tried to share with them what I was doing, and if I wasn't met in a positive or joyful way, I kind of just stopped talking to them about it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I had the pea strips that you can buy off Amazon that test for protein, and I was choosing. So the prenatal care that I did with myself in my second pregnancy was I did use those strips when I felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have a Doppler, so if I felt like using it, I would. I kind of just used it to know how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just ate like food, good food. I became a carnivore again. I was vegetarian. I decided that my body needed meat, so I started eating meat. Um, and just assessing how do I feel. Um, that was my prenatal care. And but like if I tried to explain what I was doing to family and they were skeptical, I just stopped. I just stopped sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got the birth book, Spiritual Midwifery by Ina May,
Mm-hmm.
and I read that to prepare for any what if situations. And I highlighted a few things to show my husband. We did make a plan for if I had to transfer. And for whatever reason, I felt like if anyone had to transfer, I kind of just felt it would be me transferring, not my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had told my husband, like, if something seems wrong, but I am conscious, you don't get to call the paramedics without me telling you to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a homeopathic what if kit, which had, I can't remember what remedy it was, but one of the remedies was if your like wife passes out from blood loss or something, you could put this remedy in her mouth, even with her unconscious, and she can like wake up from it kind of thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I made a cheat sheet for him, and I went through with him a couple times because my fear was, are you going to call someone to intervene when it's not truly a problem?
Right.
And
When it's not that necessary.
so was, he was what every husband's supposed to be. And he had said, I don't see this going wrong at all.
Mm.
And he did listen, but he goes like, I don't have any reservations. Like he was like, we're good.
Mm.
And so I gave birth to my daughter at 40 weeks and 5 days. I actually did have an early ultrasound because I was bleeding and I knew the ultrasound wouldn't do anything, but I wanted that sonogram. I wanted a picture of her. So if I did miscarry, I wanted to say like this is my
Mm.
like baby. So they changed my guess date. And so if we go according to their calculations, my daughter was born at 41 weeks and 3 days. But I thought that they were dumb because you're measuring, my baby's the size of a blueberry. So I'm like, you're comparing my blueberry to someone else's blueberry. Like, you can't change my guess date
Hmm.
because of 1 millimeter size difference, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad I told people the guess date I calculated because I already had people online asking me when I was going to get induced. And
Really?
yeah, and I was very honest on social media about my plan. So I had women saying, "Oh, when are you going to get induced? Like you're past your guess date." And I'm like, "I'm
Wow.
not. This baby can cook as long as this baby wants to cook."
Isn't
Um,
it so crazy though that like the moment a woman, if she's told her family, her friends, whomever on social media, that 40-week date, the moment that she starts approaching that date or the day she goes past it, it's just the automatic answer, or
yeah,
pardon, the automatic question to her is, your baby's not here. When are you inducing?
yeah,
It's like nobody
yeah,
takes into account that like that is just a random date that is just picked for no good reason,
yeah,
and that her baby could stay in there for 2 more weeks or 5 more days, and it's perfectly normal. It's always just jump straight to the, when are you inducing? You have to
yeah.
get that baby out now. The 40-week
Yeah.
date has passed. It's crazy.
It it is ridiculous, and I read that in some European countries that they actually don't like in the hospital they don't talk induction till after 52 weeks. And so even if I cooked longer than 42 weeks, I wasn't going to do that. But I was like, America, so I'm in the US. I'm like America, we do this so much earlier than other nations do it.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah,
And
doctors are talking induction to women like when they're still in their second trimester. I've heard stories of women being, like 18 weeks pregnant, and the doctor's already like, okay, so let's schedule your induction for 38 weeks because I think you'll be ready by then. It's like, no,
yeah.
fuck off.
It's so it's so ridiculous how we have
Mhm.
to manage like our grandmas didn't need this, right? Um,
Exactly.
which I forgot this fun fact. So my grandma's grandma Emma, her birth, so that's the one who's the last woman in my mother line to have a home birth.
Hmm.
Her birthday is August 8th, and my daughter's guest date was August 8th.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was like, okay, Emma's around this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I went into labor. I was so over being pregnant. I was mad. I felt like a beached whale. It's so humid in Florida. So I was so mad. I told my family to stop asking for signs because I was just mad. I did not think that I would cook a baby that long because my son was born at 38 weeks and 5 days. So I did not think that I was someone who would go past a guest date.
Mm.
Uh, so I was angry. I was talking to my baby and I was telling her to get out. But yeah, and I was cuddling my son. Like we got ready. So the night before my daughter was born, I cuddled my son and we watched Finding Nemo. I told my husband, I said, you might want to go to sleep early because I could probably have a baby tomorrow. And um, so we watched Finding Nemo. My son fell asleep, and then I was like, okay, I better go to sleep too, because I might be having a baby soon. And I woke up around 4 a.m. having surges, and I went to the bathroom, and I think when I wiped, there was a little bit of blood. So I said, all right, well, I think this is happening. And I just hung out with my son and just cuddled more. And can you be happy? I just cuddled more. And I would breathe through them. They were pretty strong, I felt like strong enough that I did have to breathe.
Mm.
And my son woke up and saw what I was doing, and he just kind of smiled. So he would smile at me while I was having these surges.
Hmm.
So eventually I just went into my husband and I don't sleep in the same room because he snores. Um, so I went and I gave him our son. I said, I'm in labor, here you go. And I labored alone. I walked outside and watched the sunrise. So that was really special. And I took pictures of the sunrise. I packed my son his diaper bag because my girlfriend said she could watch him.
Mm.
If I wanted him gone, she would watch him.
Mm.
So at 9 in the morning, it's like these are kind of strong. I think I want my son at my friend's house, and so my husband brought him to my friend's house, and I labored in bed for a long while on my side, and I would have my husband like squeeze my thigh when I would have a surge. I would tell him to squeeze as hard as he could.
Mm.
And then eventually I didn't like that anymore. So I wanted him to shove his fist in my back as hard as he could. And then eventually like that wasn't good. He kept falling asleep because we were in bed. And so I would lay down and rest. And then when I would have a surge, I would change positions where I would say, like, squeeze me.
Mm.
And he was shaking because I was like, you're not squeezing me hard enough. And uh, I was very uncomfortable. I got in the shower a lot and I didn't do a lot of mental prep. I really wanted it not to hurt because I remembered the pain from them pulling my son out. So
Mm.
I didn't forget that pain. I forgot the labor pain, but I didn't forget that pain. And my hips felt like they were on fire, which didn't happen with my son's birth. With my son, I had a lot of back labor because he was sunny side up.
Mm.
And I didn't think that was that bad. Everyone says sunny side up babies are the hardest. And I don't agree. Like, that wasn't that bad at all. But my
Mhm.
hips feeling like they were on fire. Oh, I was like, I didn't expect that. In all the birth books I had ever read, I didn't hear anyone describe their pain like that. And
Mhm.
so I was mad. I was whiny. I told my husband this was stupid and why did you want another baby? And like, I was never doing this again. And I started to calculate in my head how long would it take me to get to the hospital and get an epidural. And I
Mhm.
knew I didn't want that, but I was like, I understand why women want drugs sometimes because this freaking sucks right now. But then I told myself, you don't want that. If you go have a hospital birth, then you're going to have another baby because that's not the birth you want. So you have to do it again yourself. And um, the closest hospital to me that is less abusive than other ones is 45 minutes away.
Okay.
So, like, by the time I get there, like, this baby's gonna come out of me and I might as well have stayed home. So I was in such a bad headspace.
Mhm.
I ended up telling my husband to leave me alone because he was messing with the energy. He lit a candle and I didn't like that. And I started to snap at him and he was trying to be a good husband. And I was like, stop doing that. Like, men are such fixers
Mhm.
and there's nothing to fix. And so I left him. I told him to leave me alone and I would tell him when I wanted him. And he took a nap in one of our bedrooms and then he moved to our room. I told him, don't come in the bathroom. Like, I'll tell you when I want you. And I was praying to God. I was praying to my baby and I was praying to my grandma Emma that to stop the contractions for 30 minutes so I could nap, and then if I got a nap I could do it as long as I had to do it for.
Mhm.
um but every time I would pray I would just get a massive surge,
Mhm.
and I think that all three of them were like, let's just get it over with, let's just get the baby out. So
Mhm.
when I finally accepted, okay, I hate this and it's okay that I hate this, my daughter was born like 15 minutes later.
Oh, wow.
I, yeah, I got into the shower. I was like, all right, this is okay. It's all right. I decided to check myself to see if I could see how dilated I was. And I didn't know how to do that. I'm like, I got a big belly. How do I get up in there? So I just literally just shoved my fingers up and was like, what's up there? And I broke my water by doing that, which was not my intention. And I just thought, oh shit. Because it that can speed it up or it can do absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I could be making it more intense, but if she's not ready to come out, she's not going to come out yet. But literally, I broke my water, and then it had to be 6 surges later, she came out. I like kept my hand on my yoni,
Mm-hmm.
and so I could feel her descending through my pelvis and through the birth canal.
Wow.
And so I felt her head. It felt kind of weird because, shoved in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, okay, it's not feet. All right. Because I just didn't want to breech baby. I was like, I'll do it, but I don't want to do it. So I was like, okay, it's a head. We're good. We're good. I don't have to feel any sort of way. And I birthed her head before I told my husband to come in.
Oh,
So
okay.
her head came out. I told my husband her head was come out and he can come in, and he was like, awesome, you're doing amazing. And he gave me water, and then I had a final surge and she was born into my hands, and she just came out crying. The cord wasn't wrapped around. Like, it was just easy day. There was no variations of normal. Everything was just so simple. And got out of the shower. It did take my placenta 4 hours to be born, which scared my husband a lot.
Mm.
Because Google said that I was gonna die.
Oh
Uh,
gosh. Yeah, of
it
course
it
it
had,
would.
it had all the stories of sepsis
Mm.
and how if you get sepsis, like, that's pretty serious.
Mm-hmm.
And his grandma had sepsis one time and she's okay, but that fear, he was like, I don't like that. And so he
Mm-hmm.
did want me to transfer. And he wasn't, there was no way for him to make me. Like, that's not our relationship. If I say no, he's not gonna overstep. But he was like,
Mm-hmm.
please, can we go? We did everything how you wanted to do it. I don't want you to get upset, sis. Can we go? And I just kept saying no. Um, Google said, oh, the OB will pull on the cord to get the placenta out. So he asked me to pull on the cord, and that felt very wrong to me. And I said absolutely not, because if the cord breaks, then we're
Mm-hmm.
an emergency, and I didn't feel called to pull the cord. That felt just wrong. Um and so what did I ended up doing? So I used the homeopathics, but they didn't do anything. I had no contractions. I posted on a free birth group if anyone had tips, and just none of the tips worked. So what I ended up doing was we cut my daughter's cord. We used macrame string to tie it off. We cut macrame string off of a piece I made, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in the shower and I just decided to try this. I put my hands on my stomach and I could feel that the placenta was not attached. And
Mm-hmm.
I just worked my fingers down and it didn't hurt. It was not like fun massage that they do in the hospital or birth center where it's uncomfortable. I just could feel it moving,
Mm-hmm.
and I could go into my pelvis, and then I was able to do a little push and it just came out.
Oh, and
So
that's
that,
beautiful to hear
yeah,
because 4 hours of a placenta being in is a longer time, yes, but it's not anywhere that is, state of emergency and, you're not going to die or, something crazy is not going to happen unless it's like a very, very random and rare situation that would be like 1 in 100,000
yep,
that would happen.
yeah,
But yeah, just to state that like 4 hours of a placenta staying in the body is, yes, a little bit longer, but also just a variation of normal depending on the woman. But you trusting yourself enough to continue saying to your husband, no, we're not transferring, feeling yourself pulling on the cord and being like, oh, this isn't right. And then just doing what felt right for you to gently, get your fingers to massage your stomach to just guide it out. Like, I think that's so beautiful to hear in that journey that you went through of
yeah,
just listening to your intuition and listening and trusting yourself to just do what needed to be done in your own timing, in your own pace.
yeah. That kind of became my birth trick, I guess, my like placenta trick, because my girl watched my son ended up having an unassisted birth that she let me attend,
Mm-hmm.
and her placenta decided to stay in longer, so that's what trick she used for her placenta. So it's kind of, I feel special that I have a trick that I
Mm-hmm.
kind of passed on, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so she was born and she was perfect, and I nursed her, and um it was a very easy nursing journey. And um like, my husband had 2 weeks off, so he hung out with us, and then my in-laws came down and took care of us. They stayed with us and took care of us, so I had support the first 6 weeks. I had a lot of support, which was really great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's her birth. And then now I've got, so Cody is going to be 2 in so then I got pregnant with my daughter Maeve. Maeve was God's plan, not my plan.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, she died last year, April 22nd.
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
April. Thank you. Yeah. And then I came home and made my daughter unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out I was pregnant. I took a pregnancy test and I didn't even think I was pregnant because I just have long cycles. Ever since having babies, I have longer cycles. And I had no signs because it was really early, but I just was passing a Dollar General. So I was like, I will get a test. And I took it, and there's 2 lines, and my first words were mother effer,
Mm-hmm.
because I was just not planning a third. I actually was my plan was to start trying for a third this summer that we're in right now. And so I actually asked my daughter, like, to release herself.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to do anything to make that happen, but I was just very fearful about how am I going to handle 3 under 3, because my son just turned 3 in January, and it's just a lot being a mom without a village. We do have some family support, but it's not the okay, we wake up and we're all mothering and parenting together. So I was not excited, and she decided not to release herself. She didn't communicate with me through any dreams. But you know, she I didn't bleed or anything, so I was like, well, we're having this baby. I didn't do any blood tests or to find out like what she was, if she was a boy or girl. I did do one ultrasound only because I almost fainted in my first trimester. I went to urgent care. I wanted to get blood work done. They said, you're pregnant. You have to go to the ER. And I should have just not told them that I knew I was pregnant. And then they would have taken me to do blood work. But because I said I was pregnant, they sent me to the emergency room. And the emergency room said we want to do an ultrasound. And I was like, whatever. It's fine. I
Mm,
know that's not going to tell me anything other than if there's a heartbeat or not, but I wasn't afraid for her. I just knew something was going on with me.
mm,
And what I learned was I need to eat more snacks because my glucose was low. And then I had low sodium, which is literally just eat more. So I just always carried around snacks with me.
mm,
Uh, so that was the only blood work I had done. And that was the only ultrasound I had done. I didn't do the sneak peek blood test to find out gender. I didn't do the anatomy. With my daughter Cody, I did do a gender reveal ultrasound because if someone asked, I wanted to show that so no one would ask if I did an anatomy ultrasound. I wanted them to assume I did.
mm,
Um, because I had heard comments like, what if your baby doesn't have any kidneys? And I wanted to avoid that. So I kind of made it seem like I had an anatomy ultrasound. But
mhm,
my pregnancy, I felt strong enough to just, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I assumed how people felt with my daughter, Cody, they would feel this pregnancy. And it was what it was. And I wasn't going to expect anyone to be any different. Um, so her pregnancy was pretty easy. It was less emotional because I had accepted if someone's going to support me, I don't have to fight for that. Um and I did have, my couple girlfriends and my dad, and my husband is always a big support, and even my husband's friends who are Marine veterans talk about how tough I am. And it's like, okay, I do have support. Um, it was emotional because of my mom, but I decided I was gonna let grief teach me how to just be one with my emotion.
mm,
And um I didn't want to be pregnant while grieving for the first year, but a friend had said that it was like a gift to my child to learn how to feel
mm,
like child being in like utero. And so I started to say like it's okay. This is good. So anytime I felt grief from my mom, I just let it flow.
mm,
And I realized I could be sad and then an hour later I can be happy and joyful and that it was fine. Um my mom visited me in my dreams, not about like our baby or my baby, but she, like I felt her
mhm,
around. She visits me when she feels like it and she sends signs when she wants to. And so um yeah, that's kind of like I just felt, and I just felt what I want, felt the emotions. I didn't want to have a painful labor or birth. I talked to um some free birth mom friends who said they didn't have painful births and asked their stories on how their journey unfolded.
mhm,
And they um two of my girlfriends said that it was still intense but it wasn't painful. So I didn't really know what that meant.
mhm,
I was like, hey, this is okay. This is fine. And um yeah, I think the pregnancy was like really uneventful. I was sad for my daughter Cody that she didn't get to be the baby that long, and I did wean her when she was 13 months old because it hurt to nurse, and I didn't want to get mad at her for nursing.
mhm,
Um, And so I did end our nursing journey a lot shorter than I wanted to. I wanted to do at least a year and a half. Um, but it was like super uneventful. And I had all the birth supplies from Cody's birth. You really don't need that many puppy pads, I learned. And so I had a lot of supplies. Um, and I didn't feel like getting everything together. I just was like, I got the stuff in my house. It's fine. And I went through my son's clothes and I went through my daughter's clothes, and everyone said I was having a boy, but I kind of just felt like I might have a girl. So I washed her clothes. I washed the girl clothes, and I started calling my daughter a she in my head, even though everyone was saying I was having a boy. I just started to think I think this is a girl. And um I went into labor in the evening. I
Mm.
napped with kids and I had some surges. I had the night before I went into labor, I had seen if I could check myself and feel my cervix, and it was high and it was closed. So I just was like, well, I could go into labor tomorrow or it could be, 3 more weeks. And but then boom, the next day I was in labor and I woke up from a nap, had a couple contractions, told my husband. My dad was living with us at the time because he had moved to Florida, so he was staying with us till he found his own place. And my dad goes, Michael says you're in labor. Are you in labor? And I just said, if it keeps going, then yes. If it stops, then nope.
Mm.
And it was such a fun night. Like we just ate dinner as a family. My husband had a cigar and a scotch. He was celebrating before the baby was born, and I did a bunch of chores. I just didn't want to sit down. I felt that was how I was just coping with the surges was I'm just gonna do chores. I got our my birth stuff together. I had her in the closet. Um, I prepared our master closet. It already had a futon mattress in there. Um, because I co-sleep, so my room isn't really available. And then my dad was living with us, so the closet was kind of my space with my husband. So there was already a mattress in there, and then I got towels, puppy pads, my homeopathic stuff, and that was really it. I put a blanket down and a pillow, and I had my birth ball, and I just walked around and hung out. I have a picture of my daughter hugging my belly,
Mm.
and I don't know if she knew I was in labor or not, but I hung out with my family until there was just too much going on,
Mm.
and I labored alone. I told my husband I knew I didn't want him like my whole pregnancy. I knew I wanted to do it alone for the most part. So he watched shows with our kids. And then at 11 p.m. So I was only in labor for like 6 hours from start to finish.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. And I just decided, like, I just told myself I was one with them. I wasn't going to try to fight the contractions or the surges. Just the sooner you surrender, the quicker you open.
Mm.
And so if I had a
Exactly.
that was too strong, I would say open, open, open. And it was like I'm talking to my cervix to open.
Mm.
And that's something if you're in a hospital or birth center with people that you don't feel love for, being in a vulnerable place, talking to yourself, you can't really do.
Mhm.
And so I was very thankful that I was in a place where I could just talk out loud and tell my cervix to open and it'd be fine. So I texted my husband at 11. It was getting a little intense. Not bad, but now I finally understand what the intense part was it was harder for me to be okay with being one with
Mhm.
it, harder for me to breathe and just like release the energy. So I texted him and I said, I want you and bring wine. Um, so he brought in wine, and I decided that if the doctor can put fentanyl in a woman's spine, I can drink wine. And I had a glass and a half of wine, and I drank it in the shower, and he just sat on a chair. I had a Himalayan salt crystal, so the lights were off, and it was just my bathroom was clean, so it was a nice space. And I drank the wine. I just kind of swayed, and he tried to make a helpful suggestion, which I snapped at him. And so he stopped trying to be helpful and just hung out with me. Um, he thinks I'm really beautiful, especially when I'm pregnant. So he told me how beautiful I was. And I told myself in my head that I was a birthing goddess.
Yeah.
So I was like dancing and telling myself I'm a birthing goddess. And it was just great. And my water broke partially. It was like a little gush.
Mm.
So I thought that she was going to come out right away like her sister. So I started pushing with the contractions. And then I realized she wasn't ready yet because she wasn't moving. She wasn't going down really. So
Mm.
I just stopped pushing and I thought I had to go to the bathroom, but I didn't. So I labored on all fours on the floor of my bathroom. And then I crawled into my closet. And I have that on video, me literally crawling into my, and I told my husband to get a towel. And I really planned on not, I didn't even want him there for the birth before I was in labor. I thought I was going to 100% do it alone and just text him, like, hey, she's born.
Mm.
Um, so it was kind of cool that instead he got a towel and he did catch her. And in the birth video, her face was born and amniotic fluid shot out and it actually hit the wall of my closet.
Wow.
And it's still there. I don't feel like wiping it off. I think it's going to be really cool when she's big to say like that's from you. Um but yeah, so he caught her and I found out she was a girl and I was so excited and I didn't realize how much I wanted another girl um
Mm.
until she was born. And we already had a girl name picked out. So her name's Maeve Michelle. Her middle name is after my mother-in-law, and we just like it was so simple. It was so quick.
Mm.
Her placenta detached, I think probably within 15 minutes, and I felt crampy and I did the same technique where I pushed on my stomach. I don't know if I had to, but I just did. I was like, let's just get her out.
Mm.
Um, so I birthed the placenta and we tied it off with macrame string and cut it. I do think we cut it too early. I think we just were so, oh, we've done this before. I think we were just so, oh, okay, let's just, I don't know, just do it and get to bed, like go
Mm.
to sleep. Um, but I do think we cut it too early. I don't even know if it had been an hour. So like if I have another one, I'll be mindful not to do that. But yeah, put the placenta in a Tupperware. All three of them are still in the freezer. I want to plant them, I just haven't. So they're all there and I went to bed. I didn't even eat. So then I woke up at 2 a.m. starving. So
Mhm.
I made myself food because my husband was asleep with the toddlers. I wasn't hungry after she was born. I don't know. I knew I should eat, but I was like, oh, it's fine because I'm not hungry. And then I woke up and did eat. And um, we had another pretty supported postpartum, but her postpartum was the first time when I had sensations of depression,
Mm.
um, which was not fun. But I just was honest with my husband when I felt like things were terrible, and
Mm.
I just again just like let it flow.
Mm. Do you think that was more so to do with like the grief of not having your mother there, that it kind
I
of came in?
I I don't know. I don't know if it was the grief because of my mom. Because in life, my mom and I had a very roller coaster relationship. Um,
Okay.
she did support my free birth with my daughter Cody, but she didn't really ask questions. I didn't
Mm.
really. She trusted me to do it, but she definitely was like, "Oh my!" She said something along the lines of like, "My girls are so different from me," because
Mm.
she had very. I was a super medicated birth or medicalized birth. She did amniocentesis every other week with me.
Wow.
Labeled her as high risk, and because she was 36 when
Mm.
she was pregnant with me, and they decided to evict me from my mom's womb at 36 weeks pregnant, and somehow I wasn't a C-section. I have no idea how I wasn't a C-section. So
Whoa.
yeah, I think that it was just I don't know why. I think some of I honestly don't know why I had sensations of depression. I felt like being a mom was so hard and that
Mm.
it was the moments when I felt like it was hard, it felt terrible and
Mm.
I felt like I empathized with um like moms that decide they don't want to be in this realm anymore because it's too hard, and I was very thankful for all the blessings in my life, because there are women who don't have husbands or partners and who don't have good families to have to
Mhm.
mother. I think maybe I had the sensations of depression because I felt like I couldn't have depression if I had a trauma-free birth. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that was like the world, like me being humbled, maybe. I have no idea, but I was like, I'm just going to be honest with how I feel and hopefully it'll pass. And I think after about 4 months, it passed.
Mhm.
I know it's hard because I have 303 and not a huge village, but
Mhm.
I don't feel sensations of this is terrible and I don't want to be here. I don't have that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for being so honest with that.
Yeah. I think other moms, they, it's hard to be honest about it because people say, even if you have a free birth and you have a trauma free birth, if you say, oh, I'm having a hard time, sometimes people just say, oh, well, all moms have a hard time. And it's not really you can say that in a comforting way.
Mhm.
Like you say, oh, I've been through it, you can get through it. But sometimes moms just say, oh, like they kind of say it in a way to get over it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, um, the moms that have been honest with their journey, I got a little bit of strength from them, like, okay, I can do it too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Thank you for sharing those stories. They're really beautiful and such a nice, evolution from the birth center birth and realizing, having your first baby ripped out of your body basically for
yeah,
no reason. And then just making your mind up to say, like, this won't happen again. So I'm going to make different choices. And yeah, birthing your daughters and in these really beautiful ways where you were in your power and in control of what you wanted and held your boundaries, through people or with people that were, really testing them. So,
yeah, I'm very excited that when my daughters become moms, that's the legacy that they have, and
mhm.
hopefully they will want me there. They might not, but I'm glad that I can say, yeah, just go have your baby in the closet. It's not
Mhm.
a big fine.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, you've done such a great and such a wonderful, active service for them because this is now their birth stories and this is the stories that they'll, as you say, carry on to their children. And, that spiral, that ripple effect, it's affecting even your sisters and their children. If there's young girls in there, they're going to hear these birth stories and maybe have them think, oh, cool, well, Auntie Danielle had her babies this way,
Yeah.
so it's possible for me too. So
Yeah. Yeah, I also forgot to mention that while I was pregnant with Maeve, I got to attend to unassisted births. And so she got to learn so much before ever coming out.
yes,
It
absolutely.
is a huge, it's like a reclaiming
Hmm.
just what, like women's work, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the the beauty of being supported in such a traditional way, such an ancestral way, is it has massive ripple effects for the women that don't have children, that support the women, that the pregnant women that go with their babies in their wombs, the mothers that have children at home that go and see these beautiful births in this way. It's just so powerful. And to like see it and experience it in person or to hear these stories, it just really is such beautiful medicine for the whole collective of human beings, but especially for the women that are on this planet right now in
Yeah.
this day and age. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you so much, Danielle. I'm so grateful that we got to speak and you could share and speak so openly and so beautifully about everything you've gone through. And I just want to ask if any woman wanted to get connected with you to speak more about your birth journeys, or any information that you have to share.
Mhm.
Furthermore, after this podcast, how can they do that?
They could probably, the best way to get to me would be through Instagram. I have two accounts. I have Danielle Sweeney 4. The number 4 is my personal Instagram, and then I also have my business Instagram, which is red.thread.apothecary. Because I sell some tinctures. So those two Instagrams would be the best way to reach me.
Perfect. Okay, I will have those in the show notes so that women can find your apothecary and see what kind of medicine that you're putting through the physical way, and then also to speak to you and see what kind of medicine you're giving, through stories and such. So thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing in Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story, because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.